All right, everybody. Welcome. We're going to jump right in to the weekly Torah portion of Parshat Noach. In general, there was a recent entry into the what we call the Hayom Yom, the calendar that the Rebbe, before he was Rebbe, when he was then the son-in-law of the Reb of the Rebbe at that time, his father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, he put together a Chabad calendar. What that means is obviously the dates and times and etc. are the universal dates and times, but there was an entry always, some thought, inspirational idea of Hasidus or whatever it is to live, in a sense, to carry the day. And an entry that was of, I think it was 3 or 4 days ago, or maybe even less, maybe 2 days ago, was the quote, the well-known quote of the Alter Rebbe, which is "As medaf leben mit der Zeit." We have to live with the times. And the explanation that came out was that the Alter Rebbe was not encouraging modernity, or that we should buy a subscription to the New York Times. What the Alter Rebbe meant was that we should live with the parsha of the week. That in the parsha of the week we will find the message and the lessons, the guidance. That's why the Torah is eternal. It's not a classic, as I oftentimes say. A classic, oftentimes we see that people refer to scripture as the classic texts, and that is a misnomer, because there's not a classic text. The classic text means that it was particularly relevant at the time that it was written, and it still maintains a certain amount of relevancy as time goes forward. It has withstood the test of time, and Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, Romeo and Juliet, and all these works, whatever it is, are books that still maintain a enough relevancy in the modern day to continue reading them or taking note of them. That's the definition of a classic. An eternal text, and there's only one source of eternal text, and that's God himself, and only one such text that we have, which is the Torah, means that it is as relevant today as it was 3,000 years ago, as it will be in 3,000 years. The Torah is not talking to a group of people 3,000 years ago, and somehow the message still manages to reverberate till this very day. But rather, God is talking to us today when we are reading anything in the Torah. That's what it means to live with the times. So when we're reading the Parsha of the week, we are reading the instructions to us here in the year 2023. So Paula pointed out something that is quite stark in this week's Torah portion, which Noach is introduced, and God turns to Noach, and he informs him that he's going to have to make a seafaring vessel because something cataclysmic is coming down the pike. As God says, "Kates kol basar ba lefanai," the end of all flesh has come before me, because the world has filled with Hamas. That's what it says in the Torah. Tet mem samach. Now it's interesting because you say, okay, maybe the word Hamas means like anger or rage, and that's the name that the Arabic word is similar to the Hebrew word, and that's so not surprising that we have this word pop up, or a version of this word pop up. No, you have the word Hamas, at least from the organization, is an abbreviation of three words. Like lahavdil, to draw a very almost a spectrum of the Chabad is chachma, bina, and dat. So again, to the ultimate distinction or separation. Yeah, elef alfi, right. The havdil elef havdalah, as they say. But the point being that so the fact that the way they choose to refer to themselves in this amalgam of words is Hamas, and in Hebrew it literally means evil. And God says an evil to the point of needing to eradicate is something that is, let's say, eye-opening in this moment. And I think something to remind all those that are kind of equivocating on this, that the Torah uh, uh, doesn't equivocate on this. But either way, what I want to talk about is the metaphysics of a rainbow. We have a rainbow in this week's parsha. Why? What is the context in which we have the rainbow? After Noach comes out of the ark, God says, "I never again. I will make a covenant with you, Noach, that never again will there be such a flood. Never again will there be the kind of the eradication of all living things." And the sign for that is going to be this kashti natati ba'anan, right? And that is why when we make a bracha, when we see a rainbow, we make a bracha, right? Zocher habrit, right? V'neman brivito v'kayim b'mamaro, right? We make a bracha that God will remember His covenant. He clearly is remembering covenant because there it is. There's the rainbow. He can be relied upon this. In a sense, we use this as an opportunity to praise God's trustworthiness, because people in authority, that oftentimes we rely upon them, oftentimes don't come through, and a commitment they've made, a promise they've made, doesn't always come through. And people here living in Washington D.C., we know that that in fact it's almost a hallmark of people in power that they cannot be trusted to follow through on their words. So seeing the rainbow 2,000 years or no, 4,000 years after God originally indicated that this would be a sign that I will never do this again. We say that here, 4,000 years later, God, you're still keeping your word as you always do, and so therefore, we take a moment to note, to take note of, and to praise you for it. Now, here's a couple questions. Number one, why a rainbow? Of all things that could be a sign that God's not going to destroy the world again, He chooses a rainbow. It doesn't erect a massive mountain and say, just as this mountain is here and will stay here, so too humanity will. There's a million different metaphors that could be used, an infinite number of metaphors that could be the sign that God will hold true to never wiping out humanity, or really all the living things ever again. But He chooses the rainbow. Question number one: why? What's a rainbow? What's the meaning? What's the significance of a rainbow? The second question is the very statement "never again" indicates a mistake. Indicates regret. When you say never again, what you're basically saying is what I did was wrong, and that's why I have now made a commitment to never do it again. Right? That's why it has, in a sense, become the definition of a response to something like the Holocaust. Never again, because that was a terrible, terrible, terrible mistake, and it could never happen again. But isn't God beyond such things? God is beyond mistake. And therefore, how can He say it never again? What happens if it was justified this time? Then maybe it'll be justified again.
But what if it's not? What if it's not about that? What if the need is about Hashem realizing our need? I think that there's an extra word in the verse where He says hineni, as if He's saying, I'm ready I'm prepared to give you a sign, a symbol, whatever the word, oath, whatever that is.
Yeah, so there is the word hineni. You're right, yes. So you're saying God has changed his disposition?
No, I'm saying maybe God thought we didn't need that. We didn't need the oath, but now he's ready to give it to us. He's here, and we should know that he's here for us. And I'm going to show, and God is going to show that in a tangible way.
Oh, so you're answering a different question. Why does God
Okay.
feel a need to show us a kind of a manifestation of his commitment or even a declaration of his commitment? God could just
Okay.
choose to never do it again. But my question is more the reality of that statement. When you're saying never again, as I said, if it was justified the first time, then why won't it potentially be justified again? How are you making the statement never again? Maybe if you're saying never again because it will never be justified again, so then why was it justified the first time? Generally, when a person says never again, it's because they say, "Whew, I kind of lost control of myself over there," or whatever it is. I made a mistake. I made a mistake in judgment, what have you. And I then say never again and I can say it with absolute commitment because because I realized the mistake of the first time. It wasn't right to have done it then, and so I can commit that I will be careful and to never let it to never that it should never happen again. But if it was right when God did it this time, then it's correct and it's justified. And if something's justified, then why would I ever say about anything that's justified never again? And so that kind of statement puts us in a kind of a philosophical, theological conundrum. Was the flood justified? And if it was justified, then why never again? And if it was not justified, what does that say about God? And so to begin this answer, you see, only God can make a statement. You see, when we make a never again statement, that means we made a mistake the first time, and I'm going to do everything in my power to not that it should never happen again. Because the one thing I can speak with absoluteness is my absolute recognition that it was a mistake, and so therefore my absolute commitment to at least try to never do it again. God can say never again when not his that his disposition has changed. In other words, I made a mistake, but I'm now not going to make a mistake. But God is saying this circumstance will never again arise where this will be necessary. It was necessary this time. That's why it was right and it was justified. But my commitment to you, Noach, and to the world is not a change in me, but a change in the world. The world will never, ever come to a circumstance or situation where full eradication is necessary. And so therefore, never again.
Of the
It will
world.
never, it will
Of
never
the
be
world.
correct. The
Okay.
world will never be in a circumstance where it will be justified ever again. That's the commitment. The commitment is something has changed. Something has changed now that the world before the flood was potentially susceptible to to developing into a circumstance where a flood would be necessary, and therefore it did. It happened. And post flood, it will never be. It will never. The world will never be in a place where a flood will be necessary. And because of that, I can declare that never again. So, what's the backstory here? What's the context of this?
I don't know because I feel that it's coming again. I
So,
feel
so let's take a look. And then again, I think tying it back to every single one of us, we exist in this world, and we have our desires, we have our interests, we have our ego and our self focus. But then we have this thing called our conscience, a recognition of good that transcends my own personal desires and my own personal wants and my own personal pursuits, my selfishness and my ego. What I am basically acknowledging is that in me, there's something beyond me. There's something within me that pushes me to recognize that there's something beyond myself. I may want this. I may have the power to take it. But then there's this thing called goodness and rightness and righteousness that says that I have to self-sabotage. I am not allowed to just pursue it because I can and because I want to. But it's not the right thing to do. Who's ever heard of this? If you, in a sense, if you were coming purely from a, let's say, call a physics perspective or what have you, or anthropological perspective, then what is this concept? Where else do we see it, in a sense, in the in nature, that a creation will sabotage itself for the sake of this philosophical, ephemeral concept of goodness and virtue and righteousness? That voice that we all know within us is a ray of divine light piercing all the way through the layers from our core.
I agree with that.
Because at our core, at the core of every single existence, every single thing, is the divine energy that makes it not only function, not only live, but exist. Nothing could live without the divine energy that perpetuates its existence. There's a spark of God in everything, even in a rock. That without that spark of divine energy bringing it into existence every single moment, it would cease to be. So that spark of godliness, because again, we are very different. We creations vis-a-vis God are very different than the kind of things that we create, right? Paula, you make a painting. It's a beautiful painting. And then you put it up on an easel, and you in your workroom or your studio, and you turn off the light and you go to sleep, right? You've walked away from the painting. The painting will still be there tomorrow morning when you come back to it. You were able to create it and walk away from it, and yet it still continued to exist. So we make the assumption that God created us, right? He had to be the one to create us because he had to create us, something from nothing. But then God could walk away. After the 6 days of creation, God could go off and do whatever else he's doing. And we carry on with our very own existence. That's wrong. That's wrong. Because the truth is, every artisan, whatever you are doing, you are not creating. You are just reforming. Then the raw materials already existed. The paints, the dyes in the paints, or whatever it is, however much you want to break it down, all existed prior to your engagement with them. All you did is you mixed this, you smeared this, you've taken what already existed and you reformed it. You reformatted it, you transformed it, whatever it is. But it all existed before you got there, and therefore will exist after you leave. It is not reliant on you for its existence. And therefore, you engage with it for a while, and then you walk away from it, and it will carry on to exist without you. But with God, it's not that way. We did not exist. And we had there was no concept of any creation before God went and created it. And when you introduced and created a brand new thing that does not have any foundation to exist other than God. For example, I introduce a new nature, a brand new nature into a baseball, right? The baseball falls to the ground. I introduce this new nature that it should go up with the momentum of which I throw. The moment that energy dissipates, the more it reverts back to its original nature, right? Or I'm holding water up against, right? I'm introducing the water should stand up against. The second I take my hands away, the water will flow back. When I am introducing a brand new nature into something, I have to constantly be supporting that new paradigm. The second I release the support, the second it returns to what it was originally. We didn't exist, which means that if God releases his support for even a moment, relinquishes his support for even a moment, what happens to all of us? We
We wouldn't
cease
do
to
it.
be.
Yeah.
We
So
lose.
every single thing in existence has a divine spark at its core that is the entire reason it is existing. Not that it was brought into existence, that it is currently existing. Every single thing in existence, well, every person walking around, every animal walking around, every plant that's growing, every rock that's sitting there, all have a divine spark within it that is perpetuating its existence. It's not only giving it life, not only giving it function, giving it existence, period. Which means that divine element within every single thing is the most important element. It's the most defining element. It's the entire existence of whatever that thing is. So, why is it that we are not all walking around like angels, totally subjugated and totally nullified to the divine entity that is our entire existence?
Because it's something else that God gave us.
What do you mean that it's something else?
Free will.
But how? How is free will manifest when, if for example, a baby understands its total, not subservience, but its total reliance on the mother, right? For
Mhm.
sustenance, for food.
Right. Right.
It's visceral. And it's weird, and it becomes this person. Therefore, to the baby, the most important being, the one that automatically causes a smile to blossom and tears to when they walk in, and tears to flow when they walk out, is this mother, the source of their sustenance. When we're talking about not just the source of our sustenance, the source of our existence, how is this not the most important thing of our entire focus and consciousness and our hierarchy of priorities? How is godliness, that spark of godliness, not the most important existence or most important focus of our entire existence and our awareness? And the answer is that for much of what God created, it is. That is why that's why angels are so totally devoted to God.
The single, right. The single
Because
track.
why? Because they're transparent to their godly core. They know that all they are and their entire existence is entirely just a manifestation of this divine spark. God had in mind that we should have free will. And so therefore, God embedded that spark within every single one of us, which is the entire cause of our existence. But the layers on top of that spark are oftentimes quite disguising, quite obstructing. They're quite opaque. So at the core of our existence is that divine spark. But sometimes there's many, many layers of consciousness, of subconscious, of ego, etc., upon it that uh, that limit the resonance, the power, and the resonance and the revelation of that divine spark. It's buried deep, deep, deep under many, many, many layers. Now, if it even manages to peek through just a bit, that's what makes us. That is the consciousness, the conscience that drives us. That is why we have this inherent sense of respect for somebody else's life. Why? Because we recognize in them that divine spark. We recognize that life, that's what life means. Life means that there's a divine spark within them, like there's a divine spark within me. And the ending of life is a heinous act.
I am not as charitable as you are.
But so I don't understand why God allowed these people.
Let's stay with the academic discussion, and then we'll plug it into the real world.
All
Let's stick
right.
right now with this.
I'm trying.
So at the core of everything, this is why, again, subconsciously, we all have a sense that life is holy, life is sacred, that we have to be willing to sacrifice for the sake of others, because it's one divine spark recognizing another divine spark. So why we also have a sense that we can't just trash the world. It's not just because then we don't have a nice place to be in. But even if it's not in an area where it's affecting me, we're bothered by seeing destruction because there's an innate sense of the respect of things that all stems from the fact that my essential core of godliness percolates enough up to the surface that it then colors my perspective. When I look at the world, it's not just what do I get out of it? What can I have in this? What can I take? But rather the majesty of the divine that is found within living creatures, with the found within the mountains. And if we would see an image of deforestation or the destruction of a mountain, then there's a certain aspect within us that's bothered, even if we understand for industry and for the fact whatever, maybe the rebuilding, but the idea that something is being destroyed that God put into place. And even if I'm not religious, but there is that innate natural sense. Okay. And now I'm telling you where it comes from. I'm telling you what it is. Now, what would happen if the layers become so thick and so opaque that there is no recognition whatsoever of that divine spark? There is no respect whatsoever for a fellow person. The only thing that matters to me is my ego and my desires and my what I can have and what I can take. What happens if it all goes completely opaque?
There's evil.
Not only is there
That's
evil, but evil is in control. Not only is evil in control, evil has now there is no way to come back from that. Because that divine spark, because it does make a difference if that divine spark is there, but if it is totally, totally opaque, then there is no guide, there is no North Star back, there is no guiding star back.
So does that
Now,
mean that tshuva, this is so weird. Tshuva wouldn't work with a
no,
Hamas
tshuva
terror,
would work.
with a Hamas
Tshuva would work.
terrorist,
But what?
with a
Tshuva
Hamas
would work.
terrorist.
No, one minute. Again, so we're not plugging it in
You're
yet
still not there
into.
yet. Okay. Okay.
No. We're right now we're working at it in the textbook. What that means, not that tshuva wouldn't work, but there would be no no motivation to do teshuvah. Why? Why should I do teshuvah? What is the concept of teshuvah? What repent for what? For doing something bad? What's bad? I don't consider it bad, but I'm the ultimate arbiter of what's good and bad.
Exactly. Exactly.
And this was the scenario and the circumstance in the days of Noah.
Mhm,
The world had gone completely opaque.
mhm.
And to demonstrate that to Noah, Hashem told Noah, go build an ark. For 120 years, you're going to build this ark. And when people are going to ask you, what are you doing? You're going to say, because the fact is the world has gone evil and God is asking you to repent.
Right.
Or bad things are going to happen. If there was even one person on the planet who had any desire to do teshuvah, that would have been the wake-up call. Don't forget, the planet wasn't filled with billions and billions of people. Every person on the planet knew that Noah was building an ark.
Right.
Every last one of them. And 120 years, multiple generations, he's building this ark. And not one person was driven to a moment of circumspection, to take into consideration what they've done, to say maybe we have to be better. The world was full of evil, full of evil. And God said, okay, so here's the two choices available to me: to allow this to perpetuate, and we then will just have a perpetual state of evil and sadness and hell occurring in the world where nobody cares. You know what a society looks where nobody cares at all whatsoever for somebody else? That's hell. That's hell. There is no saving grace there. And so God says, time to hit the reset button. Now, we talked about this. We talked about this in the past, and we just talked about this right now. What would it have taken for God to erase all living things?
A blink?
What kind of massive cataclysmic act
No, the-
would he
for
have had
God?
to do? Yeah.
For God, it's a blink.
The answer is he doesn't even have to blink.
Right. Okay.
Nothing.
Nothing.
In fact, all he has to do is stop. He is proactively making all these things exist.
Right.
So all he has to do is unplug. Not even unplug, just stop giving. In other words, this would actually be quote unquote easier than keeping them alive. It would take less effort to end the world than it takes to bring them to have the world be in existence. So then, why this whole thing with a flood? Why couldn't it be God says, okay, the end of all flesh has come before my eyes because the world is full of evil. Poof! Okay, Noach, you're alone. Start again. The very next verse could have said, and the world and all of existence disappeared, and God started again from Noah. That would have been it. The second God says, it's over, it's over. And everything would have ceased. So what's this whole thing with the flood, 40 days and 40 nights? Because the point was, God wasn't just hitting the reset button. He was changing the paradigm. As we said, the world, if God is going to ensure that the world never gets to this state again, something fundamental needs to change about the world. The world needs to become a little bit more pure. The world has to be put in a position where it can never go into full 100% opaqueness. The world needs to be a tad more, a smidge more pure than it has been up until now. The needle can't be at exactly zero. The needle's got to be at least at +1, +5. It can't be at exactly zero, because if it's exactly zero, exactly neutral, then the world could, and as has been proven, eventually will go back to negative 100 and beyond the point of no return. So God doesn't have on the agenda just the eradication of the current crop of living things. There's also on the agenda the purification of the world. When one becomes impure, how do we purify in Judaism?
With a mikvah?
With a mikvah. With a mikvah. What's a mikvah made out of?
Water.
Water.
Particles of water?
What was the flood?
Water.
God dunked the world into a mikvah. God put the world into a mikvah. How do I say, oh, Rabbi, that's a cute little reference, but that's a cute little what's it called that you found there, parallel that you found there. But can you double down on it? Can you double down on the fact that this is not just some cute little common denominator you found? Well, what is the measurement of a mikvah? Anybody know? What is the measurement
Is that 40
of a mikvah?
cubits?
40 sa'ah. 40 sa'ah. 40 sa'ah. The 40 measures of water. How many days and nights did it rain in the
40.
flood? 40 days and nights.
Right.
These things are not by accident. It's being made clear to us that the very fabric of the world has been purified in the flood. And now God comes out and says the world is a different place. Everybody has that divine spark. And everybody by default will feel it. They will never be able to go back to full opaque. We can't even comprehend what that means. An entire world that literally did not give a darn.
I see that now.
Oh, you see enclaves of it.
Yeah.
You see enclaves of people that have become really sick, like sodomites. But the world will never become Hamas. Hamas will be Hamas, but the world will never become Hamas. The world in its entirety. Now, there are always the exception to the rules, as it were. There are those but the rule is that the world, by definition, is a place of conscience. Now, it doesn't mean, again, I don't say that means that we're perfectly transparent. That's the definition of a tzaddik. That's the definition of an angel. That those layers are fully transparent, that they're entirely manifest, their divine spark, that every decision that they made is driven by this one focus. And every single one of us is on the spectrum, right? Hopefully closer to that end than to the other end.
Right.
And sometimes in the span of one day, we go through the spectrum, right? I'm a little bit holier in this part of the day and a little less holy in this part of the day. But the difference is that even if we go to 99% opaqueness, 99% opaqueness, and we've seen many people, there is never the idea that the world will be beyond hope. There will never be 100% opaqueness. Even if the light is obstructed, there is the potential for it to punch through. And that's why God is telling Noach, never again will the necessity for a full reset ever again happen, because there will always be the potential for return, and it might not happen immediately, and it might be a slow, arduous, painful process, because it'll be the world may go all the way deep into negative territory. But there will be the hope of return, always. And what will be the sign, and what is the manifestation of the fact that we will never go into full opaqueness again?
The rainbow, which is water and light.
Which is light obstructed. If there's not a cloud in the sky, if there's no obstruction in the atmosphere, then it's the direct ray of light. What is a rainbow? A rainbow is where the light hits an obstruction, but manages to get through it. An obstruction enough that may even alter the light. But it hits the obstruction, but the obstruction is not opaque. The light still shines through. Look at that rainbow, Noach, and understand that the light, even obstructed, will punch through. The light will punch through. I'm now going to connect this with another idea in this parsha. Everything is going to start to click, and it really will take the entire thing. So now we know why a flood. Now we know why it was right in Noah's days, but will never be right again. Now we know why a rainbow. It's all cohesive. Let's go back a step back to the beginning of the parsha. It says, "Eile toldot Noach. Noach is tzaddik tamim haya b'dorotav." Noach was righteous, perfect in his generation. Okay. Now here again is a very confusing verse to understand. Number one, why is the Torah okay? Well, so the commentaries say, what do you mean perfect in his generation? Why didn't it just say he was righteous and perfect? That he was perfect in his generation. So Rav and Shmuel argue, great two Talmudic sages that are also known for constantly arguing. Well, not arguing, as we say, debating. One says the Torah is going out of its way to praise Noach, to say that he was perfect even despite his terribly corrupt generation. how much, how special of was he, that he was even perfect in the face of such terrible corruption.
Which of the two was
Then
that?
it doesn't say. It's interesting. It says Rabbi
Ah,
Shmuel. One says
interesting.
this and one says that. Okay, but then
Interesting.
you have Shmuel. I just said. I will assume, but maybe not. Maybe it's Rav. Okay, either way. And the other one says no. The Torah is going out of its way to qualify, to equivocate, to say, what do I mean by perfect? I don't really mean perfect. I mean perfect in his generation. And then, and to illustrate the point, he goes further. The statement of this opinion says that had he been in the generation of Abraham, he would have not been considered anything special. Okay, this is well known. This is a well-known piece of commentary, and the Rebbe jumps all over this and says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Many problems here. Problem number one: the Torah is going out of its way to disparage." The Torah is going out of its way to disparage. We couldn't just give him the compliment. We had to throw in that little like shtech. He was perfect, but don't think it was so perfect. It was perfect, but it was in his generation. Had he been in the generation, that's not the Torah. The Torah is not the kibbutzer and the hair salon. That's it. Like. In fact, the Torah in this week's parsha teaches us a general rule that you have to go out of your way to speak positively, and you have to go out of your way to limit the negative speech, because the Torah says you will take the animals, the pure animals, and it doesn't say and the treif animals. It says you'll take the kosher animals, and it doesn't say the non-kosher animals. It says you'll take the pure animals, you'll take the animals that are not pure. In other words, instead of saying tameh, it says it uses extra words to say those that are not pure, finding a more delicate way to speak negatively. So the Torah goes out of it, teaches us that you have to go out of your way to not speak negatively. And here it seems to be that, according to this opinion, the Torah is going out of its way to deliberately speak negatively. It could have just said he was perfect. No. Don't think he was so perfect. Had he been in the generation of Avraham, he wouldn't have been perfect. This runs counter to the nature of Torah. Problem number one. Problem number two, last time I checked, you can't qualify the word perfect. Perfect is an absolute word. Either something's perfect or it's not. And if it's not perfect, it's not perfect. Right? You can't be perfect relative to this. You can be good relative to this. You can be righteous relative to this, but perfect is an absolute term. Right? It always reminds me, there was a little anecdote, and somebody shared. It says that he was a carpenter, and he brought on a high school apprentice over the summer. A high schooler who just, and he says this high schooler was not necessarily very skilled, but at least he says he made up for it in his enthusiasm. He says that we once on a job site, and I was laying a crossbeam, and it needed to be exact, right? It needed to be exactly level. So I told him, I'm going to kind of shift up, shift down on the piece of wood. You're going to keep an eye on the level, right? On that bubble level. And when the bubble's right in the kind of in the center, which indicates that it's perfectly level, you'll tell me, and then we'll drive in the screw to put in place. So I started shifting and shifting. Then I hear him say, "Oh wow, perfect, amazing, can't be better, right there. Don't move." Well, okay. So I bend down to pick up the screw, and my hand shifts, and it drops a couple of centimeters. And I hear the kid go, "Ah, even better." So perfect. You can't be better perfect or less better perfect. You're either perfect or you're not. Tamim means perfect. Tamim hayabedorotav. He was perfect in his generation. You can, again, you want to say righteous in his generation. You can say, okay, but perfect means perfect. Was he perfect or was he not perfect? So that's point number two. And point number three, why the comparison to Avraham? It says, had he been in the generation of Avraham? So the Rebbe says, on what we just finished saying, we have to understand. It doesn't say had he been standing next to Avram, in comparison to Avraham, he wouldn't have been. It says, had he been in the generation of Avraham, Ilo haya b'doro shel Avraham. Why? Because it's all about the circumstance of the world. Noach, what happened? God told him, Noach, build an ark, and then when the rains start coming, go into the ark and sail away. And leave the rest of humanity behind. And what did Noach say? Aye, aye, Captain. That's exactly what he did. And the entire world was destroyed, and Noach made not a peep. What did Avraham do when he heard about Sodom and Gomorrah?
He argued.
God said, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. What did Avraham do?
He argued.
How dare you, God, right? And he fought, and he advocated, and he tried to, right? And negotiate, or whatever it is. He had a very different approach. He tried his best to try and save these people. So here's the thing. The Torah is about to tell the story of Noach. And this is what Noach did. Okay? And what he did was perfection. But last you go and think, okay, if what Noach did is perfection, then I should try to emulate Noach. And exactly what he did, the Torah says, no. What he did was perfection for his generation, with the world the way it was in his days. The world was beyond hope, and therefore the best thing that Noach was able to do was to preserve himself, build the ark, go into the ark, and that was it. But once the world changed because of the flood, and the world now is never beyond hope, then Noach's approach is no longer the correct one. Had he done what he did in his generation, had he done that in Avram's generation, that would have been wrong. Rather, we have to understand that the world of on our days is never beyond hope, even if it feels particularly dark right now.
And it is.
And it is. But trust me, Abraham knew what that was like, right? Avram was the first one who was going to be killed because of his belief as a Jew.
But
And
they
he
want
still
to
didn't
kill
give
all
up.
the Jews now.
Yeah, well, he was all the Jews at that time. And he still didn't give up on the world. And that was because he understood this point. He understood what the message of the rainbow is. That the world, that every single individual has a divine spark. That was true about Noah's generation as well. But the general rule is that you're not opaque to it. Now, whether it means that you will be living your life and every single decision will be you'll be transparent to that divine spark. No, very few people are like that. We're going to be some gradation of translucent.
But
not
Hashem
opaque.
understood that Sodom and Amorah, despite Abraham's efforts, needed to be eradicated.
Right. Because what was the negotiation there? The negotiation was
numbers of righteous people.
Right, and it went down, and it was all variations of the number 10, right? Yeah. He first started with 50, right? Because there was 5 cities. Right. Is there 10 people in each city? Okay, it wasn't 10. Then he went to 45. He said, how about God? 9 plus you'll make the minion of righteous people. In other words, 10 again. No, okay, there's not 10. There's not 45. Okay, what about 40? Can we say 4 of the cities with 10 righteous people? No. Are there 30? 30 righteous people? No. Can't say 3 of the cities. How about 20? Are two of the cities at least have 10 righteous people? No. So then he's down to 10. He says, is there at least one of the cities that has 10 righteous people? And when it was not even 10, then he stopped. Why? Because even if, in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, they have the ability to be turned around, They need somebody to do that for them, to help them, to guide them. Now, the problem with Sodom and Gomorrah is they created a unique situation. Nobody was allowed in. Part of their evil was that nobody was allowed in. Anybody would try to. Hospitality was punishable by death. They were closed cities. Right? That's why when the two angels showed up, right, to stay at Lot's house, the whole rabble, right? So they were closed cities. So there was no chance for somebody to come in and inspire them. So Avram was asking, is there at least anybody, is there any among the indigenous population? Is there at least 10? And the reason why 10 is because there are 10 character traits. We know that people have 10 dominant character traits, which is why a meeting is number 10. It says, is there a righteous person to speak to each of the character traits? Is there a seed of potential inspiration? Can these people be shown how to uncover their righteousness? That divine, can there be some direction given? And when Avram heard that no, there wasn't, that's when he backed away. But that was only because it was one specific region, and God entertained Abraham's negotiation because Avram was correct in approaching. It said that this has to be the default. The default is that there is salvation possible. Because never will the world be beyond salvation. There will always be 10 generations goes from Noach to Avram, and it doesn't seem like anybody is going to be able to turn around this paradigm, right? But then comes an Avraham, and he does, and slowly but surely turns the entire trajectory of history to this very day. To this very day, the most influential human being ever is who? Avraham. The vast majority of the world subscribe to the ethos of Avram. If you're a Jew, for sure. You're Christian, yes. If you're Muslim, yes. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to do it right. Doesn't mean that you're not corrupting it or adulterating it. Yes, all that's also very true. But the bottom line is that Noach was not able to have any influence whatsoever, even though he was making his point for 120 years. Not one person. The world is not that way anymore. And this was the Rebbe. And I want you to think about this. The Rebbe lived through his the majority of his life. It was the majority of his life through the hell that was the darkest period of Jewish history, between losing siblings in the Holocaust, communist Russia, the confluence of those two. Jewish history has everything. What we are dealing with right now, lady, and this is my point I make to a lot of people: how dare we fall into despair and fear right now? This is child's play compared to what our grandparents. Forget going to our ancestors. Our grandparents had to deal with, and somehow they had the spirit to move on. And so we have to be careful with how much we allow ourselves to descend into hyperbolic despair. That's not the Jewish way. They dealt with a lot worse, and yet they still managed to come out, see the sunrise in the morning, and say, "Moda ani lefanecha." And so we have to also, of course, it doesn't mean at all to be dismissive of the pain of this, and in a sense the deep sense of justice and the concern of the anti-Semitism and all that is all valid. But at the end of the day, God has already made a promise that the world will never be in a circumstance where it is beyond the point of no return. And he also told us that we have to be part of the solution. That if we consider ourselves the children of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that comes with marching orders. And to be a force for good and a force for light, to help people uncover and discover that light. And we do that by going out there and doing mitzvahs loud and proud. And by saturating the atmosphere with mitzvahs, which is why it is the most correct thing that we can do in light of this. instead of spending our time hunting all the anti-Semitic rhetoric and finding and seeing it, and of course there's a role for that and there's a place for that, not denying it. But the best way to combat darkness is with light. And that's why you'll find that it's been inspirational to see the many organizations, and obviously Chabad among them, but also taking a lead in it, that are gathering Jews together to do mitzvahs. If the world seems a little darker, what are you going to do about it? And what you're going to do about it is you're going to bring light. And on that note, I actually would like to remind everybody that Nechami is organizing a marquee moment, a marquee event, the Challah Bake. We know that the women are blessed with a couple of mitzvahs that really, the scope and the magnitude, the power of these mitzvahs is no small thing, no small measure, and the mitzvah of challah in particular, to be healing, to be sustaining. There's so many stories that I personally know of women who baked challah with a particular blessing in mind, a particular prayer in mind. Was a classmate of Nechami who contracted cancer.
Mm.
And what it did, all her friends got, and she is, thank God, doing well beyond any of the expectations of any of the doctors.
Wow.
And then they did this again, because everybody, when they picked up their piece of challah, they were imbued in this holy, powerful moment. They made a specific prayer, and again, if we believe, as we do, that God is in control of the world, and that He is paying attention to what we do, then let's come together and let's fight the battle on the spiritual front, because that has been, at the end of the day, what is when King David, who was one of the greatest military generals ever, said that the success of his victories is Ela v'recha ve'ela v'asusim v'anachnu b'shem Hashem nazkir. His success is because he speaks in the name of God. The spiritual battle is the secret to the Jewish people, and the Greeks and the Romans and the Ottomans and the Persians and the Babylonians and the Nazis and the Inquisition, they're all gone. They're all gone. And they had a greater military might than the Jewish people ever had.
And this will go too.
Without a question. Without a question. Somebody asked me, what are we going to do about Iran? What are we going to do about Iran? Iran is a power like we've never seen. I said, actually, Iran's not a power now like we've never seen. In fact, there was a greater Persian empire that ruled the entire world and threatened utter annihilation for the Jewish people, and we turned them into Hamantashen. So it was our enemies should think twice. The bottom line is, let's go out, let's do our mitzvahs, let's do it proudly, with a sense of empowerment and a sense of positivity. Daven for all those who need the miracles, for the hostages, and for our brothers and sisters on the front lines. And God willing, it's when we need miracles, it's wonderful that we have the address to send that request.
Let me ask you a question, please. I had called Nakami, and I have 4 friends that want to come to the Challah Bake, and she just answered me, absolutely, go to Shalom Chabad. So I just go to that site and put on all the people's names?
Yeah. Oh, to Shalom, you don't even have to put in their names. Just kind of lock in their reservations, because we have a system with the amount of. So if you go to shalomchabad.com/challah-bake and just put it in the amount of reservations, then we know to hold those spaces.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad.
So, but I would recommend doing it because they're coming. The reservations are coming
as soon as we hang up. I'm going to do it.
Okay.
That's great. That's great. Rabbi,
yes, but
I'm sorry. Another.
Go ahead, Paul.
Is the Jeff who lost his mother the Jeff that I study with on Shabbat morning with you?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. All right, everybody. Shabbat shalom. Looking forward to.
Shabbat shalom.
I say I'm going to be the one guy that's going to be able to sneak into the Challah Bake. But I look forward to seeing everybody. Really, everybody should make an effort to come out. I think it's something we all need. And on a personal note, Nechami's putting a lot of effort into this. Really want to make her, sure that she walks away with a sense of overwhelming
Absolutely.
success.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Rabbi.
right,
Have a
everybody.
good Shabbos to everybody.
Thank you.
Good Shabbos.
And
Good
by the way,
Shabbos.
I got all
Shabbos.
vanilla for you. I got all.
Say again, what?
I got all
Great.
vanilla.
Yes, and
A
I got
little cupcake for kids,
the bagels
vanilla.
and schmear. They're on their way.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. All right. I'm
right.
going to go on right now. Okay. Bye. Very
Bye.
good.
Thank
Thank you.
you.